The prison ship Valdris moved through the darkness between stars like a metal coffin drifting through an endless ocean. Inside its cold walls, thousands of prisoners sat in their cells, waiting for death or worse. The ship belonged to the Kathrani Empire, a race of tall, blue-skinned creatures who had conquered half the galaxy through fear and cruelty. They collected prisoners from every world they conquered, using them as slaves, test subjects, or simply entertainment for their cruel games. Deep in the lowest level of the ship, far below where the other prisoners were kept, there was a special cell. This cell was different from all the others. It had walls made of the strongest metal in the known universe. It had energy barriers that could stop a nuclear blast. It had 17 different locks, each requiring a different key held by a different officer. And, inside this cell, wrapped in chains that weighed more than a small vehicle, sat a single human male. His name was Marcus Cole, though he had not spoken that name in 7 years. He had not spoken any name. He had not spoken at all. He simply sat in his chains, his head down, his long dark hair covering his face like a curtain. The Kathrani guards who brought him food twice a day were always nervous. They would slide the tray through a small slot, never opening the main door, never making eye contact, never staying longer than necessary. Marcus had been on this ship for 7 years. Before that, he had been on another prison ship for 3 years. Before that, he had been in a ground facility on a Kathrani colony world for 2 years. 12 years total. 12 years since they had taken him from Earth. 12 years since they had killed everyone he loved. 12 years since he had made a promise that he would keep no matter how long it took. The chains around his body were not ordinary chains. They were made from a special alloy that the Kathrani had developed specifically for him. Normal chains, he had broken. Energy bonds, he had shattered. Force fields, he had walked through. So they had created these chains, infused with a substance that drained physical strength, that kept muscles weak, that made even breathing feel like hard work. And, still, they were afraid of him. On the bridge of the Valdris, Commander Vethkarn stood watching the stars through the main viewing window. He was old for a Kathrani, his blue skin starting to fade to gray, his tall frame slightly bent with age. He had commanded this prison ship for 30 years, and, in all that time, he had never been afraid of any prisoner. Until Marcus Cole. He remembered the day they had brought the human aboard. He remembered watching the security footage from the ground facility where Marcus had been held before. He remembered seeing a single human, unarmed and surrounded by 50 Kathrani soldiers, somehow kill every single one of them in less than 3 minutes. He remembered the way Marcus had moved, not like a person but like something else entirely, something that should not exist. The Kathrani called him the Quiet One. They had other names for him too, whispered in dark corners when they thought no one was listening. The Ghost Walker. The Chain Breaker. The Reaper. That last name was the one that made even the bravest soldiers nervous. Because there was a legend among the Kathrani, a legend from before they had become conquerors, when they were still young and scared of the universe. The legend spoke of beings called Reapers, creatures of death and destruction that would one day come to judge all species for their sins. Commander Vethkarn did not believe in legends. But, when he looked at the security feed showing Marcus Cole sitting motionless in his cell, he felt something cold move through his ancient bones. There was something wrong with that human. Something that went beyond his impossible strength and speed. Something in his eyes, in the few moments when his hair parted and you could see them. Those eyes were not the eyes of a prisoner. They were the eyes of something waiting. In a different section of the ship, in the common prisoner area, a young Valari female named Shira pressed herself against the wall of her cell. The Valari were a peaceful race, small and gentle, with silver skin and large dark eyes. They had no military, no weapons, no defense against the Kathrani invasion of their home world. Now most of them were dead, and the survivors were scattered across slave ships and prison vessels throughout the empire. Shira had been captured 6 months ago. She was barely an adult by her species standards, just 18 cycles old. She had watched the Kathrani soldiers burn her village, kill her parents, drag her away in chains. Now she sat in a cell with 3 other prisoners, trying to survive each day, trying not to think about what would happen when they reached their destination. The mining colonies. Everyone knew what happened in the mining colonies. You worked until you died. Most did not last a year. She had heard stories about the prisoner in the deep cell. Everyone had. The guards talked about him sometimes, usually in hushed voices, usually after they had been drinking the strong Kathrani alcohol that made their words loose and careless. They said he was a monster. They said he had killed 1,000 soldiers. They said the only reason he was still alive was because the high command wanted to study him, wanted to understand how a human could do the things he had done. Shira did not know what humans were. She had never seen one before being captured. But she had heard about them. They were a new species, recently discovered by the Kathrani on a small blue planet at the edge of the galaxy. The Kathrani had invaded Earth 5 years ago, expecting easy conquest like all the others. What they had found instead was something that made even the proudest commanders speak in careful whispers. Humans fought back. Not just with weapons, but with a ferocity that the Kathrani had never encountered. They did not surrender when outnumbered. They did not flee when their cities burned. They fought from the ruins, from the sewers, from the mountains. They fought with guns and bombs and knives and bare hands. They fought with a desperate, burning rage that made the Kathrani conquest of Earth the bloodiest campaign in their entire history. And, among all the humans who fought, there was one who stood apart. One who became a legend on both sides. One who they said walked through battlefields like death itself, leaving nothing but silence behind him. Marcus Cole. Nobody knew exactly who he was or where he came from. The record showed he had been a soldier before the invasion, part of a special operations unit that was never officially acknowledged. When the Kathrani came, he had been on leave, visiting his family in a small town in the middle of nowhere. The Kathrani had bombed the town in the first wave of attacks. There were no survivors. Except one. What happened after that became the stuff of nightmare and legend. Marcus Cole began a one-man war against the Kathrani. He attacked their bases, destroyed their supply lines, killed their officers. He moved like a ghost, appearing out of nowhere, striking with impossible precision, and vanishing before reinforcements could arrive. The Kathrani sent entire battalions after him. None returned. They sent their best hunters, their most skilled assassins. They found them later, or what was left of them. For 3 years, Marcus Cole was the most wanted person on Earth. The Kathrani put a price on his head that could buy a small planet. They devoted more resources to capturing him than they had to conquering most worlds. And, finally, after losing more soldiers to one human than they had lost in their previous 10 conquests combined, they caught him. Or rather, he let them catch him. That was what the reports said. That was what made the commanders nervous even now, 7 years later. Marcus Cole had simply stopped running. He had walked into a Kathrani base, unarmed, and surrendered. No explanation. No demands. Just silent surrender after years of brutal warfare. They had tried to execute him immediately, of course. They had failed. Bullets did not seem to affect him the way they should. Energy weapons barely slowed him down. They had tried poison, disease, suffocation, crushing, burning. Nothing worked. It was as if the universe itself refused to let Marcus Cole die. So they had done the only thing they could do. They had put him in chains, wrapped him in every restraint they could find, and locked him away where he could not hurt anyone. That was 12 years ago. And, still, Marcus Cole sat in his chains, silent and waiting. Waiting for what, nobody knew. Nobody wanted to know. Back in her cell, Shira curled up in the corner and tried to sleep. Tomorrow would be another day of fear and hunger and uncertainty. Tomorrow would be another day of watching guards walk past, wondering if this would be the day they decided she was not worth keeping alive. She closed her eyes and dreamed of her home, of the silver forests and the singing streams, of her mother's gentle voice and her father's warm laugh. She did not know that her life was about to change. She did not know that in 3 days, the Valdris would encounter something in the darkness between stars. Something that would change everything. Far away from the prison ship, in the cold emptiness of space, something was moving. It was not a ship, not a planet, not any object that sensors could identify. It was something else. Something old. Something that had been sleeping for a very long time. And, now, slowly, it was beginning to wake up. The first sign came as a disturbance in the navigation systems. Small at first, just minor fluctuations that the ship's computers attributed to cosmic radiation or sensor glitches. The navigation officer, a young Kathrani named Devik, reported it to his supervisor, who dismissed it as nothing important. They were in deep space, far from any planets or hazards. A few sensor glitches were nothing to worry about. But the glitches continued. They got worse. The fluctuations became stronger, more frequent, more precise. It was almost as if something was testing the ship's systems, probing its defenses, learning its weaknesses. Devik reported this too, with more urgency this time. His supervisor told him to run a diagnostic and stop bothering people with minor technical issues. Commander Vethkarn was in his quarters when the first real alarm sounded. He was reviewing prisoner manifests, deciding which ones would be sent to the mines and which ones would be sold to private buyers. It was tedious work, but necessary. The Empire ran on slave labor, and someone had to manage the supply. The alarm cut through the silence like a blade. Vethkarn was on his feet instantly, moving toward the bridge with the speed of long practice. By the time he arrived, his crew was already at their stations, faces tight with confusion and the beginning of fear. Something had appeared on the sensors. Something big. Something that had not been there a moment ago. It was directly in their path, and it was not moving. Vethkarn stared at the readings, his old eyes struggling to make sense of what he was seeing. The object was enormous, easily 10 times the size of the Valdris. Its shape was impossible to determine because it seemed to shift and change every time the sensors tried to lock onto it. And it was producing energy readings that were completely off the scale. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then, Devik, the navigation officer, said what everyone was thinking. Something like this should not exist. Nothing in the known universe produced energy signatures like that. Nothing natural, anyway. Commander Vethkarn made a decision. They would change course, go around the object, avoid any contact. He gave the order, and the ship began to turn. The engines fired, pushing them on a new trajectory. Everything seemed fine. They would pass the object at a safe distance and continue on their way. And then, the object moved. It moved faster than anything that size should be able to move. One moment it was behind them, the next it was directly in front of them again. The Valdris had to cut engines hard to avoid collision. Alarms blared throughout the ship. Prisoners screamed in their cells, thrown against walls by the sudden stop. Guards shouted orders that nobody could follow. And, through it all, in the deepest level of the ship, Marcus Cole remained perfectly still. His head, which had been down for 7 years, slowly began to rise. His eyes, hidden behind his long dark hair, began to open. Something had changed. Something in the universe had shifted. And, for the first time in 12 years, Marcus Cole felt something other than cold patience. He felt recognition. On the bridge, chaos ruled. Every system was going haywire. Communications were down. Weapons would not respond. The engines were behaving erratically, firing in random bursts that sent the ship spinning. And, through the viewing window, the object was growing closer. Not moving toward them. Growing. Expanding. Unfolding. It was changing shape, transforming from an undefined mass into something more structured. More deliberate. More purposeful. And, as it changed, the crew of the Valdris began to see what it really was. Not a natural phenomenon. Not a cosmic anomaly. A ship. A ship built by something that was not Kathrani, not Valari, not any species in the known galaxy. Something older. Something more powerful. Something that had been waiting in the darkness between stars for longer than the Kathrani had existed. The alien vessel extended some kind of appendage toward the Valdris. It moved slowly, almost gently, like a hand reaching for a frightened animal. When it made contact with the prison ship's hull, every light on the Valdres went out. Emergency power kicked in a moment later, bathing everything in red, but, by then, the damage was done. The crew felt it in their bones, in their minds, in some deep part of themselves that they did not even know existed. Something was scanning them. Something was looking at every part of the ship, every system, every person. Something was searching for something specific. Commander Vethkarn tried to give orders, but his voice would not work. None of them could speak. None of them could move. They could only stand there, frozen, as the alien presence moved through the ship like water through sand. In the prisoner areas, the same paralysis gripped everyone. Shira felt it pass over her, cold and ancient and utterly alien. She felt it look at her, examine her, and then move on. She was not what it was looking for. None of the prisoners were. None of the guards were. The presence searched and searched, moving lower and lower through the ship. Until it reached the deepest level. Until it reached the special cell with the 17 locks and the strongest walls and the prisoner wrapped in chains. Marcus Cole felt the presence enter his cell. He felt it look at him. And, for the first time in 12 years, he looked back. His hair parted, revealing a face that had not been seen by anyone in years. It was a human face, but there was something wrong with it. Something that went beyond scars or age or the effects of captivity. His eyes were not the eyes of a prisoner. They were not the eyes of a victim. They were not even the eyes of a soldier. They were the eyes of something that had been sleeping for a very long time. And, now, like the ancient thing that had found him, Marcus Cole was beginning to wake up. The presence withdrew from the ship. The paralysis ended. Crew members collapsed, prisoners screamed, systems flickered back to life. On the bridge, Commander Vethkarn gasped for breath, his old heart pounding in his chest. He had felt it. He had felt the presence touch his mind, look at his memories, see everything he was and everything he had done. And he had felt something else. Something that terrified him more than the alien vessel, more than the paralysis, more than anything in his long and violent life. He had felt the presence recognize Marcus Cole. He had felt it react with something that might have been respect, or fear, or anticipation. He had felt it wake something up. Down in his cell, Marcus Cole did something he had not done in 12 years. He moved. Not much, just a slight shifting of his weight, a small adjustment of his position. But the chains that had held him still for so long seemed to groan in response. They had been designed to suppress his strength, to keep him weak and helpless. They were no longer working. Commander Vethkarn watched the security feed from the deep cell. He watched as Marcus Cole, still wrapped in chains, slowly lifted his head. He watched as the human took a deep breath, the first deep breath in years. He watched as the chains around him began to creak and strain. And he knew, with the absolute certainty of approaching death, that everything was about to change. The alien vessel was still out there, still waiting, still watching. It had found what it was looking for. It had woken something up. Now it was waiting to see what would happen next. In her cell, Shira felt something change in the air around her. Something that made her silver skin tingle and her dark eyes widen. She did not know what it was. She did not know that in a few hours, she would meet the prisoner from the deep cell. She did not know that her life, and the lives of everyone on the ship, were now balanced on the edge of a knife. All she knew was that something was coming. Something that had been waiting for a very long time. Something that would not wait anymore. The Valdres continued its journey through the darkness, the alien vessel following at a distance like a patient shadow. On the bridge, Commander Vethkarn tried to regain control of the situation, but, deep in his heart, he knew it was too late. Whatever they had awakened, whatever they had found, was beyond his power to control. And, in his cell, his chains straining more with each passing moment, Marcus Cole waited. But, this time, he was not waiting for death or rescue or revenge. He was waiting for the right moment. The moment was almost here. The hours passed slowly on the Valdres, but the tension never faded. Every crew member felt it. Every prisoner sensed it. Something fundamental had changed when that alien vessel made contact, and now everyone was waiting for the consequences. Commander Vethkarn sat in his command chair, watching the security feeds from every section of the ship. His eyes kept returning to one feed in particular. The deep cell. The human prisoner. Marcus Cole had not moved again after that first shifting of his position, but somehow that was more frightening than if he had been thrashing against his chains. It was the stillness of a predator about to strike. The calm before an explosion. The alien vessel remained at a distance, neither approaching nor retreating. It simply hung there in the darkness, watching, waiting. The Valdris had tried to move away several times, but each time, the alien ship matched their movement perfectly. There was no escaping it. There was no fighting it. All they could do was wait and see what it wanted. In the prisoner section, Shira sat awake while her cellmate slept. She could not shake the feeling that had gripped her since the alien presence passed through the ship. It was not exactly fear, though there was fear mixed in. It was something else. Something like anticipation. Something like hope. She had heard the guards talking after the incident. They had been scared, their usual arrogance replaced by nervous whispers. They spoke of the deep cell, of the prisoner who had woken up after 7 years of stillness. They spoke of chains beginning to break. They spoke of running, of finding escape pods, of getting as far from this ship as possible. But there were no escape pods available to prisoners. There was no escape at all. Whatever was coming, Shira would have to face it right here in this cell, with these walls and these bars and these guards who treated her like an animal. She pressed her face against the small window in the cell door, trying to see down the corridor. Everything looked normal. Guards walked their rounds. Lights flickered overhead. The hum of the ship's engines vibrated through the floor. Normal. Except it was not normal at all. The guards walked too fast. Their hands stayed too close to their weapons. Their eyes darted too often toward the lower levels. They knew something was coming. They just did not know when. Deep in the ship, Marcus Cole continued his patient waiting. But now his mind was active, working through possibilities, calculating odds, making plans. The presence that had touched him had awakened something that had been sleeping inside him for 12 years. Not just his strength, though he could feel that returning now, flooding back into muscles that had been suppressed for too long. Something else. Something deeper. He remembered what he was. Not just a soldier. Not just a fighter. Not just a man who had lost everything and sought revenge. He was something more. Something that the Kathrani had feared from the first moment they saw him. Something that the alien presence had recognized instantly. The Kathrani called him the Reaper, and they thought it was just a name, just a legend, just a way to describe a human who killed with unusual efficiency. They were wrong. It was not just a name. It was what he was. What he had always been, even before he knew it himself. Marcus Cole was the last of an ancient line, a bloodline that stretched back through human history to times before recorded memory. His ancestors had been called many things over the centuries. Berserkers. Champions. Chosen ones. Deathwalkers. Every culture had its own name for them, but they all described the same thing. Humans who were more than human. Humans who could tap into something beyond normal strength and speed. Humans who became, in moments of extreme need, something close to supernatural. The ability usually lay dormant. Most who carried the bloodline lived and died without ever knowing what they were. It took a specific trigger to awaken it. Great trauma. Terrible loss. A moment of absolute darkness that broke something inside and let something else out. For Marcus, that moment had been the day the Kathrani bombed his hometown. The day he walked through the ruins and found what was left of his wife. His daughter. His parents. His entire world reduced to ash and silence. Something had broken inside him that day. Something had broken, and something else had awakened. The months and years that followed had been a haze of blood and violence. Marcus barely remembered most of it. He remembered the killing, the endless killing, the way his enemies fell before him like wheat before a scythe. He remembered moving faster than he should be able to move, hitting harder than he should be able to hit, surviving wounds that should have killed him instantly. He remembered the fear in the eyes of the Kathrani soldiers, the way they screamed and ran even when they outnumbered him 100 to 1. And he remembered the moment when he had decided to stop. Not because he was tired. Not because he was defeated. But because he had realized that simple revenge was not enough. Killing soldiers would not bring back his family. Destroying bases would not undo what had been done. If he wanted true justice, true retribution, he needed to do something bigger. Something that would hurt the Kathrani Empire at its very core. So he had let them capture him. He had let them chain him. He had let them lock him away in the deepest cell they could find. And he had waited. Waited for the right moment. Waited for the opportunity that would eventually come. The alien vessel was that opportunity. Whatever it was, whatever it wanted, it had changed the game. It had broken through the Kathrani defenses like they were nothing. It had paralyzed an entire ship with a single touch. And it had woken him up, restored his strength, reminded him of what he was. Now it was time to move. In the control center for the deep cell section, 3 guards sat monitoring the feeds. They were the unlucky ones, assigned to watch the most dangerous prisoner on the ship during the most unsettling night any of them had ever experienced. They kept their weapons close and their eyes on the screens, watching for any sign of trouble. The first guard was named Kenneth. He was young and nervous, only recently assigned to the Valdris. He had heard stories about Marcus Cole, but he had never really believed them. Humans were just another conquered species. They could not be as dangerous as the legends claimed. But, after tonight, after feeling that alien presence pass through his mind, he was not so sure anymore. The second guard was named Vora. She was older and more experienced, but that experience made her more frightened, not less. She knew what Marcus Cole had done before his capture. She had seen the classified reports, the footage that regular soldiers were not allowed to view. She had seen what one human could do when he decided to stop holding back. It had given her nightmares for months. The third guard was named Drax. He was big and confident, the kind of soldier who believed that superior firepower could solve any problem. He was not afraid of Marcus Cole. He was not afraid of anything. Or at least, he pretended not to be. Inside, where no one could see, he was as scared as the others. They sat in tense silence, watching the feed from the deep cell. Marcus Cole sat in his chains, perfectly still, exactly as he had been for 7 years. Nothing had changed. Nothing was happening. Maybe the incident with the alien vessel had been a false alarm. Maybe everything would go back to normal. And then, the chains broke. It happened so fast that none of them saw the actual moment. 1 second, Marcus Cole was wrapped in restraints that could hold a small ship together. The next second, he was standing free, the broken chains falling to the floor around him like dead snakes. Kenneth screamed. Vora reached for the alarm. Drex grabbed his weapon and fired at the screen, as if he could somehow heard Marcus Cole through the security feed. Alarms began to blare throughout the ship. Red lights flashed. Automated warnings echoed through the corridors. But it was already too late. Marcus Cole moved through the ship like a wind of destruction. The 17 locks on his cell door meant nothing. He did not break them. He did not unlock them. He simply walked through the door as if it was not there, leaving behind twisted metal and shattered mechanisms. The guards who tried to stop him did not even slow him down. They fired their weapons, and the shots seemed to pass through him without effect. They tried to block his path, and he moved past them before they could react. They tried to sound additional alarms, and they found that the communication systems were no longer working. The alien vessel was helping him. He could feel it, a distant presence that was interfering with the ship's systems, opening doors before he reached them, disabling weapons that tried to lock onto him. Whatever the alien entity was, it wanted him free. It wanted him to do what he did best. On the bridge, Commander Vethkarn watched in horror as his ship fell apart around him. Reports came in from every section. Guards down. Prisoners rioting. Systems failing. And, through it all, one figure moved steadily upward through the levels, leaving chaos in his wake. The commander had two choices. He could try to fight, to rally his remaining forces and make a stand against the impossible. Or he could run, find an escape pod, and hope that Marcus Cole would be too busy with other things to notice him fleeing. He chose to fight. Not because he was brave, but because he knew that running would not help. Marcus Cole had spent 12 years on this ship. He knew every corridor, every hatch, every hiding place. There was no escape. There was only fighting and dying, or surrendering and hoping for mercy. Vethkarn did not expect mercy. The Kathrani had shown none to humanity. Marcus Cole would show none to them. He gathered his remaining officers and prepared for the end. In the prisoner section, everything was chaos. Guards ran past cells without stopping. Alarm lights painted everything in shades of red and orange. Prisoners screamed and banged on their doors, some terrified, some excited, most completely confused. Shira pressed herself into the corner of her cell, trying to stay out of the way. Her cellmates were panicking, pushing against the locked door, calling for someone, anyone, to let them out. But no one was coming. The guards had bigger problems to deal with. And then, the screaming started. Not the distant screaming from other parts of the ship that had been going on for some time now. This was closer. This was right outside. This was the guards who had been stationed in this section, guards who had just encountered something they could not fight. Shira heard energy weapons discharge. She heard shouting in the harsh Kathrani language. She heard running footsteps and cries for backup and then, suddenly, terribly, silence. The door to the cell block opened. Through it walked a figure that Shira had never seen but somehow immediately recognized. He was tall for a human, lean and scarred, with long dark hair and eyes that seemed to glow with an inner fire. He walked slowly, almost casually, as if he was taking a pleasant stroll through a park rather than moving through a ship he had just torn apart. Marcus Cole stopped in front of Shira's cell. He looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, he reached out and touched the lock. There was a brief flash of something that might have been light or might have been something else entirely. The lock crumbled to dust. The door swung open. Shira stared at him, too shocked to move. Her cellmates had gone completely silent, huddled against the back wall, too terrified to even breathe loudly. Marcus Cole spoke for the first time in 12 years. His voice was rough from disuse, barely more than a whisper, but somehow it filled the entire cell block. "You are free," he said. "All of you. The guards are gone. The locks are broken. You can leave now." And then, he turned and continued walking, leaving Shira and the others standing in their open cell, trying to understand what had just happened. Shira was the first to move. She stepped out of the cell, her legs shaking, her heart pounding. Around her, other prisoners were starting to emerge from their newly opened cells. Some were crying. Some were laughing. Some were just standing there in shock. She should have run. She should have found an escape pod, found a safe place to hide, done anything except what she actually did. But something made her follow Marcus Cole. Something made her trail behind him at a safe distance, watching as he moved through the ship, freeing prisoners and eliminating any guard who tried to stop him. He never ran. He never shouted. He moved with the calm efficiency of a force of nature, unstoppable and inevitable. Guards who stood their ground were cut down in seconds. Guards who ran were allowed to flee. Marcus Cole was not killing for pleasure. He was killing because it was necessary, and only when it was necessary. They reached the upper levels of the ship. The chaos was worse here. Crew members were trying to reach escape pods. Officers were attempting to organize defenses. And, in the distance, through the viewing ports, the alien vessel had moved closer. It was right alongside the Valdris now, its impossible shape filling the entire view, its surface flickering with lights that seemed to pulse in rhythm with Marcus Cole's movements. Shira finally found her voice. "What is that thing?" she asked, not expecting an answer. But Marcus Cole answered. "It is an observer," he said, still walking, still moving toward the bridge. "It has been watching this galaxy for a very long time. Waiting for something specific. Waiting for someone specific." "You?" Shira asked. "Yes." "Why?" Marcus Cole stopped. He turned to look at her, and, for a moment, his expression softened into something almost human. "Because there are some crimes so terrible that even the oldest powers in the universe cannot ignore them. The Kathrani have committed those crimes. They have enslaved and murdered their way across half the galaxy. They have destroyed entire species. They have caused suffering beyond measure." He turned back toward the bridge. "And, now, judgment has come." They reached the bridge. The doors were sealed, locked from the inside, reinforced with emergency barriers. It did not matter. Marcus Cole placed his hand against the metal, and it simply fell apart, dissolving into nothing in seconds. Inside, Commander Vethkarn and his remaining officers stood in a rough defensive formation. They had weapons raised. They had determined expressions. They were ready to die fighting. Marcus Cole walked in and stopped in the center of the bridge. He looked at Vethkarn for a long moment. "I know you," he said. "I remember your face. You were there 12 years ago, when they brought me to this ship. You smiled when they chained me. You said I would rot in the darkness forever." Commander Vethkarn said nothing. His weapon trembled in his hands. Marcus Cole continued. "Your empire killed my family. Your soldiers burned my home. Your fleets have destroyed countless worlds. And, for 12 years, I have sat in chains, waiting. Do you know what I was waiting for?" The commander still did not speak. "I was waiting for this," Marcus Cole said. "I was waiting for the moment when your crimes would finally catch up with you. I was waiting for the universe to decide that enough was enough. And, now that moment is here." He gestured toward the viewing port, toward the massive alien vessel that hung there in the darkness. "That ship is not here for me," he said. "Not really. It is here for you. For your entire empire. It has been watching, recording, judging. And, it has decided that the Kathrani must answer for what they have done." Commander Vethkarn finally found his voice. "You cannot destroy an empire. One human, even one like you. It is impossible." Marcus Cole smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "I do not have to destroy your empire. I just have to start the fire. The fire will do the rest." He turned to the navigation console and began entering commands. The crew tried to stop him, but they could not even get close. Some invisible force held them back, pushed them away, kept them from interfering with whatever Marcus Cole was doing. When he was finished, he stepped back. "The ship is now on a new course," he said. "We are heading directly to the Kathrani home world. All communication systems have been locked open. Every species in range can hear what is happening on this ship. And, when we arrive at your home world, I am going to give your people a choice." "What choice?" Vethkarn demanded. "Release every slave. Free every prisoner. Surrender to those you have wronged. Or face the same judgment that this ship is about to face." Commander Vethkarn laughed, a bitter, broken sound. "They will never surrender. The Empire would rather die than show weakness." Marcus Cole nodded. "I know. That is why this is not really a choice. It is a warning. A warning of what is coming. A warning that the galaxy has been watching, and it does not approve." He walked toward the viewing port and looked out at the alien vessel. It pulsed with light, responding to his gaze. "This species," he said, gesturing at the ship, "has been around since before your empire existed. since before most life in this galaxy existed. They do not interfere often. They prefer to watch, to observe, to let things play out naturally. But, sometimes, when the balance tips too far, when evil grows too strong, they step in. They send someone like me to start the fire. And, then, they watch it burn. He turned back to face the bridge crew. Your empire is about to burn. Not because I say so. Because you have earned it. Every slave you took. Every world you destroyed. Every family you tore apart. All of it has been recorded. All of it has been judged. And, all of it is going to come back to you now. Shira stood in the doorway of the bridge, watching everything unfold. She did not fully understand what was happening, but she understood enough. The Kathrani had conquered her people, killed her family, and were planning to work her to death in their minds. And now something was coming for them. Something they could not fight. Something that would make them face the consequences of everything they had done. For the first time since her capture, she felt something like hope. Marcus Cole finished whatever he was doing at the console and turned to leave. He stopped next to Shira. You should find somewhere safe, he said. Things are going to get worse before they get better. But, they will get better. I promise you that. Shira looked up at him. What are you going to do? I am going to keep my promise, Marcus Cole said. I am going to make them pay for what they did. Not just to me. To everyone. Every slave. Every victim. Every species they have crushed under their boot. I am going to make them answer for all of it. He walked past her, heading back into the ship. The alien vessel outside pulsed with light again, following his movements, waiting for the next step in whatever plan was unfolding. Shira watched him go, then turned to look at the bridge crew. They were standing frozen, unable to move, unable to fight, unable to do anything but wait for whatever was coming. She did not feel sorry for them. Not even a little. She turned and followed Marcus Cole into the ship, determined to see how this story ended. The Veldris traveled through space at speeds that should have torn it apart. The engines, pushed far beyond their normal limits, screamed in protest but held together through some miracle that nobody could explain. Outside the viewing ports, stars streaked past like lines of light, and the alien vessel kept pace effortlessly, its impossible form matching every turn and acceleration without apparent effort. 3 days had passed since Marcus Cole freed himself from his chains. 3 days of chaos, of reorganization, of prisoners becoming passengers and guards becoming prisoners. The surviving Kathrani crew had been locked in the cells that had once held slaves, treated with more fairness than they had ever shown their own captives, but still confined, still helpless, still waiting to learn their fate. Marcus Cole had taken command of the ship, not through any formal process but simply because no one could challenge him. The freed prisoners followed his instructions because they had seen what he could do. The captured guards obeyed because they were terrified of what he might do if they did not. And the alien vessel continued to follow, a constant presence that reminded everyone that this was not just one human on a mission of revenge. This was something bigger. Something cosmic. Something that could not be stopped. Shira had stayed close to Marcus Cole since leaving the bridge that first night. She did not know why she felt compelled to follow him. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was gratitude. Maybe it was simply that she had nowhere else to go and nothing else to do. But, whatever the reason, she had become something like an assistant, helping him organize the freed prisoners, distribute supplies, and prepare for whatever was coming. The other freed prisoners came from dozens of species across the galaxy. There were Valari like Shira, gentle and silver-skinned. There were Kroth, large and heavy, built for hard labor in the mines. There were Feni, small and quick, often used as servants in Kathrani households. There were a dozen others, each with their own story of conquest and captivity, each with their own reasons to hate the empire that had taken everything from them. Marcus Cole treated them all the same. He listened to their stories. He learned their names. He told them about Earth, about the invasion, about the war that had devastated his home world. He did not try to be their leader. He did not give inspiring speeches or make grand promises. He simply did what needed to be done and let them decide for themselves whether to help him. Most of them helped. They had all suffered under Kathrani rule. They all wanted to see it end. And they could all feel something in the air, something that told them this was their moment, their chance to strike back against the empire that had crushed them. On the fourth day of the journey, Shira finally worked up the courage to ask Marcus Cole the question that had been burning in her mind since the beginning. What happens when we reach their home world? They were in what had once been the commander's quarters, now being used as a planning room. Maps and charts covered every surface, showing Kathrani space, fleet positions, communication networks. Marcus Cole stood before a holographic display of the Kathrani homeworld, studying its defenses. He was silent for a long moment before answering. The Kathrani Empire has ruled this region of space for over 1,000 years. They have conquered hundreds of species. They have enslaved billions of beings. They believe they are invincible. They believe that nothing can threaten their power. He turned to face her. When we arrive at their homeworld, I am going to prove them wrong. How? Shira asked. One ship against their entire fleet? Their planetary defenses? All the soldiers and weapons they have gathered over 1,000 years? Marcus Cole smiled slightly. It was the same cold smile he had shown Commander Vethkarn on the bridge. Not with weapons. Not with soldiers. With something much more powerful. He walked to the viewing port and looked out at the alien vessel that paced them through space. That ship out there is not a warship. It does not carry weapons. It does not need them. What it carries is something more dangerous than any weapon ever built. It carries truth. Shira did not understand. Truth? Marcus Cole nodded. For 1,000 years, the Kathrani have told themselves a story. They are the superior species. They have the right to rule. The other races are weak, inferior, meant to serve. They believe this story completely. It justifies everything they do. Every conquest. Every atrocity. Every slave taken and every world destroyed. It is all acceptable because they are superior and everyone else is not. He turned back to face her. But what happens when that story is proven wrong? What happens when the entire galaxy sees that the Kathrani are not superior? What happens when an empire built on the myth of invincibility is shown to be vulnerable? Shira began to understand. It falls apart. Exactly. The Kathrani hold their empire together through fear. Fear of their military. Fear of their power. Fear of what happens to anyone who resists. Take away that fear, and the empire has nothing left to stand on. But one ship cannot take away 1,000 years of fear. Marcus Cole's smile widened. One ship cannot. But one symbol can. One moment can. One image that spreads across the galaxy, showing everyone that the Kathrani can be beaten, can be brought to their knees, can be made to face justice for what they have done. He gestured at the alien vessel again. And that is what our friend out there provides. It is not a weapon. It is a witness. It is broadcasting everything that happens on this ship to every receiving system in range. Every species with communications technology is watching us right now. They saw me break free. They saw me take this ship. They will see what happens when we reach the Kathrani homeworld. And they will know that the Empire is not invincible. That it can be challenged. That it can be beaten. Shira felt a chill run through her. You are not trying to destroy the Empire yourself. You are trying to inspire everyone else to do it. Marcus Cole nodded. I am one human. I cannot conquer a 1,000-year empire. But I can start a fire. I can show the galaxy that the Kathrani can be hurt. And then, I can let the fire spread. He turned back to the display of the Kathrani homeworld. There are hundreds of species under Kathrani rule. Billions of beings who have been waiting for a chance to fight back. They have not done so because they believed it was hopeless. Because they believed the Kathrani could not be beaten. But, if someone shows them otherwise? Shira finished the thought. They will rise up. Yes. Not everywhere. Not all at once. But, enough. Enough to shake the empire. Enough to force the Kathrani to spread their forces thin. Enough to give other species a chance to win their freedom. It was a bold plan. A desperate plan. A plan that depended on countless variables aligning in just the right way. But, as Shira looked at Marcus Cole, at the calm certainty in his eyes, she believed it might actually work. "What do you need me to do?" she asked. Marcus Cole looked at her for a long moment. "I need you to survive," he said finally. "I need you to watch what happens and remember it. I need you to tell your people what you saw here. To let them know that the Kathrani can be beaten. That freedom is possible. That they do not have to accept slavery as their fate." Shira straightened her small frame. "I can do that. I know you can. That is why I am asking you." They traveled for 2 more days before reaching the outer edges of Kathrani space. By then, word had spread through the Empire. The escaped prisoner. The hijacked ship. The alien vessel that no one could identify. Panic was spreading through military ranks. Rumors were multiplying. The High Command was in chaos, trying to figure out what to do about a threat they did not understand. The Kathrani had never faced anything like this before. For 1,000 years, they had been the conquerors. They had been the ones spreading fear. They had been the ones who made other species tremble. Now, for the first time, they were on the receiving end. And they did not know how to handle it. The first response came in the form of a fleet. 50 warships, the pride of the Kathrani military, arranged in a perfect formation to intercept the Valdris before it could reach the home world. Their commander sent a message demanding surrender. The message was ignored. The commander sent another message threatening destruction. That message was ignored too. Then, the fleet opened fire. The Valdris should have been destroyed instantly. 50 warships, each carrying enough firepower to glass a small moon, all targeting a single prison transport. The outcome should not have been in question. But, the alien vessel moved. It positioned itself between the Valdris and the attacking fleet, its impossible form absorbing every shot that came near. Energy weapons disappeared into its surface without effect. Missiles detonated harmlessly against its exterior. The most powerful weapons in the Kathrani arsenal struck again and again, and not a single one got through. The fleet commander ordered a retreat. His ships did not respond. Their systems were frozen, locked in place by some force that the engineers could not identify. They could only float there helplessly as the Valdris and its guardian sailed past them, continuing toward the home world. Every species in range saw it happen. Every communication system in Kathrani space carried the images. 50 warships, the best the Empire had to offer, rendered completely helpless by a single alien vessel. The myth of Kathrani invincibility had been shattered in a single moment. On the Valdris, Marcus Cole watched the frozen fleet fall behind them. He felt no satisfaction, no triumph, no joy. He felt only the cold certainty that had sustained him through 12 years of captivity. The plan was working. The fire was starting. The Empire was beginning to burn. They reached the Kathrani homeworld 3 days later. It was a beautiful planet, blue and green and white, circled by dozens of defense stations and protected by the largest fleet in the known galaxy. The sight of it should have been enough to crush any hope of success. The Valdris was one ship. The homeworld defense fleet numbered in the thousands. But Marcus Cole was not here to fight. He was here to deliver a message. The Valdris approached the planet slowly, broadcasting on every frequency, visible to every sensor and every camera. The alien vessel remained close by, pulsing with light, making sure that every image and every sound reached the widest possible audience. Marcus Cole stood on the bridge, alone except for Shira, who had refused to leave his side. He looked at the planet below, the heart of an empire that had caused suffering beyond measure, and he felt something he had not felt in 12 years. Peace. Not because the fighting was over. It was only beginning. Not because justice had been served. That would take years, decades, perhaps generations. But peace because he had kept his promise. Peace because he had done what he set out to do. Peace because the fire was burning now, and nothing could put it out. He activated the communication system. His voice went out across the entire Kathrani Empire, broadcast to every receiving system, heard by every species under their rule. My name is Marcus Cole. 12 years ago, your forces invaded my home world. Your soldiers killed my family. Your empire tried to break me. They put me in chains. They locked me in darkness. They thought they had won. He paused, letting the words sink in. They were wrong. I have broken free. I have taken this ship. I have passed through your defenses as if they were not there. And now I stand here, at the heart of your empire, to deliver a message. He looked directly at the camera, directly at every being watching across the galaxy. The Kathrani are not invincible. They are not superior. They are not unstoppable. They are flesh and blood, fear and pride, like any other species. And, like any other species, they can be defeated. His voice hardened. I am not here to destroy your empire. One human cannot do that. But, I am here to show the galaxy what is possible. I am here to light a fire that will spread across every world you have conquered, every species you have enslaved, every being who has suffered under your rule. He gestured at the planet below. This is your chance. Your one chance. Release your slaves. Free your prisoners. Answer for your crimes. Or watch your empire burn around you as the galaxy rises up against everything you have done. He smiled, that cold, terrible smile that had terrified Kathrani soldiers for years. The choice is yours. Choose wisely. He cut the transmission. For a long moment, there was silence on the bridge. Then, Shira spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. What happens now? Marcus Cole turned to look at her. Now we wait. And, we see if the fire catches. The answer came faster than anyone expected. Within hours of the broadcast, reports began flooding in from across the empire. Slave revolts on mining colonies. Uprisings on conquered worlds. Entire planetary garrisons finding themselves suddenly overwhelmed by populations who had been waiting for exactly this moment. The Kathrani tried to respond, but their forces were stretched too thin. Every ship they sent to crush one rebellion was needed somewhere else. Every soldier they deployed left another position vulnerable. The empire that had seemed so solid, so permanent, so unshakable was suddenly crumbling at the edges. On the home world itself, chaos reigned. The government issued statements denying everything, claiming the broadcast was fake, insisting that everything was under control. Nobody believed them. The images were too clear. The failure of the fleet was too obvious. The alien vessel still hung in orbit, visible to anyone who looked up at the sky, a constant reminder that something had changed. Marcus Cole watched it all unfold from the bridge of the Valdris. The alien vessel had not moved since they arrived, but he could feel its attention, its approval. It had done what it came to do. It had woken him up. It had helped him escape. It had broadcast his message across the galaxy. Now it was watching to see what happened next. Shira stood beside him, her dark eyes fixed on the planet below. Is it really going to work? She asked. Will they really fall? Marcus Cole was quiet for a moment before answering. Not all of them. Not right away. The Kathrani are strong. They have ruled for 1,000 years. They will not give up without a fight. Then, what was the point? He turned to face her. The point is that they can no longer win. Before today, they believed they were invincible. They believed that resistance was useless. They believed that their empire would last forever. Now they know that is not true. now they know they can be challenged. Now they know that the galaxy is watching, waiting, hoping for their fall. He looked back at the planet. They may fight for another 100 years. They may kill millions more before the end. But the end will come. I have made sure of that. The fire is burning now. Nothing can stop it. Shira thought about her own people, her gentle Volari who had never imagined fighting back against anyone. Would they rise up too? Would they find the courage to resist? She thought about her parents, killed in the invasion. Her village, burned to ash. Everything she had lost. And she realized that if there was even a chance of making that loss mean something, of preventing other families from suffering the same fate, she had to take it. I want to help, she said. Not just watch and remember. I want to fight. Marcus Cole looked at her for a long moment. Then, he nodded. There will be plenty of fighting to come. The Empire will not fall in a day. There will be battles and sacrifices and losses that seem unbearable. Are you prepared for that? Shira straightened her spine. My people were peaceful. We did not believe in violence. But the Kathrani taught us that sometimes violence is necessary. Sometimes fighting is the only way to survive. She met his eyes. I am prepared. Marcus Cole smiled, and this time it was not the cold smile of the Reaper. It was something warmer, something human. Good, he said. Because the work is just beginning. Over the following weeks, the galaxy transformed. What had begun as scattered uprisings became coordinated rebellions. Species that had never communicated with each other began sharing information, resources, strategies. Former enemies united against their common oppressor. The broadcast from the Valdris was copied and shared across 1,000 worlds, inspiring millions of beings to believe that freedom was possible. Marcus Cole became a symbol, his face known across the galaxy, his name spoken in whispers and shouts alike. Some called him a hero. Some called him a monster. Most simply called him the Reaper, the death that had come for the Kathrani Empire. He did not care what they called him. He only cared that the fire kept burning. The alien vessel departed one night without warning, simply fading into the darkness between stars as mysteriously as it had appeared. Marcus Cole watched it go without surprise. It had done what it came to do. It had judged the Kathrani and found them guilty. It had woken the Reaper and given him the means to deliver that judgment. Now it was time for humanity, and all the other species who had suffered under Kathrani rule, to finish what had been started. Shira stood beside Marcus Cole as the alien vessel disappeared. What now? She asked. Now we fight, he said. For as long as it takes. Until every slave is free. Until every conquered world has a chance to determine its own fate. Until the Kathrani understand that there are consequences for what they have done. He turned away from the window. I made a promise, 12 years ago, standing in the ruins of my home. I promised that I would make them pay. Not just for what they did to me, but for what they did to everyone. That promise is not yet fulfilled. But it will be. Shira followed him off the bridge. Behind them, through the viewing ports, the stars continued their eternal dance, indifferent to the drama playing out among them. Empires rose and fell. Species fought and died and were reborn. The universe continued, as it always had, as it always would. But, for the Kathrani, the universe had changed forever. The human in chains had become the Reaper in arms. The prisoner had become the judge. The victim had become the avenger. And the fire that Marcus Cole had started would burn until there was nothing left of the empire that had caused so much suffering. In the end, the Kathrani were right to be afraid of him. They were right to lock him away in the deepest cell, wrap him in the strongest chains, guard him with the tightest security. They understood, on some level, what he was and what he could do. Their only mistake was thinking that chains could hold him forever. Nothing holds the Reaper forever. He waits. He watches. He remembers. And, when the moment comes, he strikes. The Kathrani learned that lesson too late. The galaxy would remember it for 10,000 years. And, somewhere out in the darkness between stars, the ancient observers continued their eternal watch, satisfied that justice had been served once more. The chains were broken. The Reaper was free. And, the universe would never be the same.